Life hacks miss the point. This is Commonplace book, Commonplace binder. I'm going to set this down. So we're looking at the Commonplace binder 101 playlist. We're on the 59th video. That's the title. That's next video. I'm going to go through these one column at a time. Life hacks miss the point. So what am I talking about here? Well, I'm looking at Commonplace book, except I changed it to Commonplace binder. And a commonplace book is going to change your life. Well, not necessarily. So it might be you don't really need life hacks. You just need like more money or a better place to live, or you know, the little things aren't really going to cut it. Just saying. So like, even if a commonplace book or a commonplace binder or whatever else is going to be the life hack that changes it all, you're going to need to create a calm space. Like, if you don't have a space to do the really complicated inner work, or thoughts need to get on the page or whatever, it's not really going to work out. Like, you kind of need the big stuff. Balance methods. So you can do the small stuff, like making sure to be nice to people and getting all the chores done, and maybe writing down one good or bad thing about the day, preferably one of both. You know, just thinking about all the little things. But if you need a new car, or a new house, or a new bed, or a new relationship, or, you know, like something really big, eating more carrots isn't really going to help you out. You know what I mean? So, careful display. Yeah, back to the Commonplace book, Commonplace binder thing. So this is my demo. This is it says Commonplace book, but it's really a binder. And so the difference is this has rings, pages go in and out. Because there are pages going in and out, there are no page numbers. And because there are no page numbers, I organize things in a content section rather than a index. I'm gonna put this down again. But yeah, careful display. Why do I need to carefully display my Commonplace book? How is that going to help me create a calm space? Is it going to help me balance the methods? Well, it might. So I have a bunch of different things on this list. I'm going to move this a little bit closer. And so the hope is at least one of these keywords will create an idea in my head that will have a good video title, and then with a good video title I will come up with a bunch of ideas, and then after I write them down I will talk about them in a way that is helpful. So careful displaying, I'm not really sure if I meant that, but really you just got to use it. Like, you don't need to show it off to people. It's basically like showing off a journal, a diary, a scrapbook. Like, you can do that, that's fine, but you know, not every problem is going to be solved by looking through one's photo album. Now, if you have a relative who's very old that doesn't have any friends anymore because they all died, maybe looking through the photo album will help them. Might also make them sad. Might have a mystery reaction. You never know. So we're going to move on from that. Now it's time for the academic rant. What's going on? Okay, so I'm going to hold this up again. I think this sort of thing should be in schools, or at least people should have it as like a supplemental form of education. And so the easiest way I think we have to implement something like this is to add one page every year. That's it. So first year you have one page, second year you have 2 pages, third year you have 3 pages, and it just keeps going up like that. And so why will we start with only 1 page? Well, this is a page that a student can keep with them at any time during their education. So that's during a test, that's during a quiz, that's during anything. And so if we had that right now for like 100 pages or 200 pages or 10,000 pages, that would kind of break multiple choice. That would kind of break a lot of different things in the school system right now. So if it would break the school system, why do I think we should be adding it? Well, if the way that everyone's cheating is through extra information, it might be helpful for us to actually give the students extra information. Because then even if someone is cheating, they're not going to have as much of an advantage. So that's a bonus. But why are we focused on this to prevent the cheating? No, we're focused on this because when students are in school, they have no information. And then when they're out of school, they're expected to function perfectly in a world made of information. That doesn't make any sense. And so if the students are creating their school-approved knowledge that they can carry with them at any time, that they get comfortable using, that they base all of their work on, you can see which quotes they get from which places. They will write that down, and then you will see how they turn that into something afterwards. So even if there is generative AI and it somehow also works, and it somehow also doesn't negatively affect the students at all, we will have a record of whatever the student was up to. And so one of the other benefits is if we're only adding +1 page per year, we're not going to start with 100 pages. And that would be very overwhelming for a student. But eventually we will get to 100 pages after 100 years. So what do we do then? Well, we do what we have been doing for every year before that. And all that is we take the top half of students' Commonplace books, which at the beginning will just be a single sheet of paper, and we take the sheets of paper. Let's say there are 100 students in a graduating class. We take the top 50, and then we copy each one of those sheets twice. Or I guess we get 2 copies of it. So it'll go from 100 students to the work of 50 of them, and then that work gets doubled. And so what this means is when new students come to the school, they will have a school-approved set of knowledge, which is different depending on the student, which is sourced by multiple students, and is kind of proven to get better grades. So assuming the school can do the job of figuring out which students get the top level grades, this should not be a problem at all. And I've spent way too much time on this. I'm going to talk about this in depth in the next playlist. All of this is a demo. Like, this is a Commonplace binder, but like this is like a proof of concept. I don't actually work in this except when I'm making videos, because it tells me like, hey, set up the stand, and all the other related things. But yeah, I'm gonna talk about all of that in the next playlist in 2026. So I took a decade. What did I take a decade to do? To think about this, to figure out I was gonna have to present this on YouTube. Oh my god. I don't super like being on camera. It is kind of fun to see myself hop around, but I'm supposed to watch a different spot. Technically speaking, I think the phone is supposed to be reversed, and I'm not actually supposed to be able to see myself at all. But that just seems depressing. Then I would just be talking to a camera. And I know that's technically better, and people will tell me to do that, and I will probably do that eventually. But for now, I'm just going to be like, hi! So yeah, I took a decade to figure out that I was going to have to put this stuff on YouTube, and it's very annoying for me, and I am taking a little bit longer because I realized I was going to have to do a prep playlist before I actually talk about the education project. So this is one aspect of it. There are many aspects of it, but I'm not going to spend I'm not going to spend 100 videos on every other aspect. This one is good to start with because it's all about taking notes and changing one's mind and getting proof of things. And I also just talked about how, you know, it'd be good if it started as 1 page and we increased it. Well, if we increased it in terms of quality, but also quantity. And so this, you know, might be the 1 page that I would use for making videos, because it's all the different terms that I would use. And so technically I could make videos with just that. It'd be very annoying, but I could technically do that. Typing speed. So maybe you might be wondering why I hand wrote all this stuff on the cover rather than typing it. Is my typing speed that bad? No, my typing speed is actually quite good. And it actually gets better every year. Not because I get better, but because everybody else gets worse. Because, you know, people get used to like phones and tablets, and you know, the people who are really good at typing are getting older. So I might actually be getting better at typing. But the reason this is here is because most people are a lot better at typing than they are at handwriting. Because handwriting, you know, it takes a lot of time. We gotta teach people that. Copy paste. So typing speed is one benefit of having a digital Commonplace, and that's why this is about progressing, because you can go a lot faster digitally. Yeah, copy-paste goes a lot faster. It's also a little riskier because when people are copy-pasting, they don't necessarily source everything properly because they're just like, oh yeah, I copied it. Nice. So you might have a bunch of junk that you'll just like bring along with you if you end up copy-pasting. Crossed out. So I use a pencil, but I actually cross things out most of the time instead of using an eraser. What's up with that? Well, I could use a pen, but I prefer to use a pencil because it makes me feel like I'm working on something that can be ever-changing and it's not stuck in one particular situation. And that is one of the main benefits of having a living document. So for personal reasons, I keep it as a pencil. You could use pen if you want, it's fine. Crossed out, we just did that, so gotta cross this one out of my mind. Heavy lifting. So one of the benefits of the book is if you get bonked on the head, you might forget some of your stuff. And if you wrote it down first before you got bonked on the head by, you know, playing a sport or, I don't know, falling out of a tree or something, then the book can actually do the heavy lifting for you. So earlier I was talking about, in my little academic rant here, I'm not an academic, by the way, just to clarify. Actually, I specifically decided I wasn't going to go to college, even though I was at a college prep school. There were other reasons why I left, but I was working on this all the way back then. So I took a little bit more than a decade, but in terms of like actually telling people I was working on this, rather than being like, oh yeah, you know, I'm thinking about this thing, like, it's been more like a decade. Yeah, so the heavy lifting, if your brain is broken, or if a student is just not very smart, also, not your brain specifically, that was, I've been talking to a lot of Californians lately, so my speech is a little bit like theirs. If you're super smart, or not quite on that level, this will give you an advantage. So you won't have to rely as much on memorization, and you should be able to use more of your brain for things like actually thinking something through, rather than just remembering like every single element of the periodic table. And if you can do that, that's great, that's cool, that's very impressive. I'm proud of you for your academic achievements. However, getting every student to do that is really limiting their cognitive capacity, as far as I'm concerned. It might be that the more memories we have, the smarter we are just automatically. It could also be that we just kind of crystallize our intelligence, and that's why old people have trouble changing their mind, and young people can normally just like flip-flop because there's nothing upstairs. They haven't internalized all the thoughts. I think a lot of this is super debatable, but I haven't looked into it recently. Basically, the point is, if you have a book that has half the answers and the other half are in your head, it's a lot easier percentage-wise to get through school than if 100% of the stuff has to be in your head. Reprinted template. Don't really know what's going on here, but I guess we could say that this is my template for making videos, and if I reprinted it, what I would do, or what I would have, is I would have infinite copies of this. I would have something that could be a digital printable, and then I could hide that behind a paywall and then actually receive some money. If I could, you know, convince somebody it was worth getting access to. Paper. So what happens if you're allergic to paper, or there's no paper, or maybe we should just use digital stuff because we don't have to worry about paper? At some point, you're probably going to have to do something with paper. But there are many advantages to just not using it, because if there's a dust problem, if you've got really sensitive skin, if it takes up physical space and you have to like move, or you just don't have a lot of space, then this is gonna suck. Like, the paper is kind of crap. Add character. So how are you gonna add character if you're just working on a digital system where like you can't feel it or smell it, or I mean, you shouldn't be tasting it, but like, there are a lot of different senses engaged with this. Like, you could hear that and feel that, and then if something came out, I would be smelling that. So hopefully I'm not too allergic to the dust. I hope it adds character. Studio. Am I in a magnificent studio where I can record stuff like this? Well, not really. There's just like a random map over here. This is a nice blue wall, so I don't know. I guess I could do a lot worse as far as studios go. I've tried to make sure that there are things for the sound to bounce off of, although that wall has basically nothing. So that's kind of a problem. But everything else has something to deal with the sound. Do you need a studio to be in a calm space? Not necessarily. You don't really need a studio for a digital commonplace either. Although I will say, if you have a lot of paper, you're going to need a larger studio than if all you have is a laptop. Because if you have the laptop, you can just go anywhere. Diverse viewpoints. So one of the benefits I talked about earlier over here is that if you have like 10 students committing to helping with a project, that project will have the opinions of 10 people. And so if you're making a commonplace of any kind on your own, you should be collecting diverse viewpoints, because at the very least you will be collecting things that are valuable to you now, and then if you keep this practice going for like half a century, you're probably going to have different opinions and source different people and their opinions. So yeah, even if it's just you talking to yourself, you should have fairly diverse viewpoints written down. Unless you're like, that's in the past, I cross it out, and I move on to the next one. Digital commonplace. So, wow. I wonder where that came from. I wonder. So, what are the benefits of a digital commonplace? And does a commonplace actually count if it's digital? Well, I don't really feel like answering any of that, because I feel like there are other videos that do that better. And I'm working on a commonplace binder, which is not really standard in itself. So if you want to look for the technical terminology of things that actually exist, that people accept as real things, then probably check the videos from the other people on that subject. Ethical dilemma. Is it ethical for me to send people to other channels? I think so. But it does kind of suck, because I'm like, yeah, go over there, even though my stuff's over here. Like, I feel like I should just tell people, you know, I have some other videos in this playlist, and some of them might be more helpful for you in this moment. Well. Yeah, there are not really any like ethical dilemmas about doing this digitally as opposed on paper, or as opposed to on paper. Like, if you're doing this on paper, sure, you might be helping cut down the rainforest, but if you're doing this digitally, like, we're kind of assisting with some other questionable things that happen in places where computer parts are sourced from. So, you know, it's like, it's kind of like, don't look too much into where chocolate comes from, or where coffee comes from, or, you know, a whole bunch of other different things. Document your side quests. So, like I said down here, I think, if you're working on side quests for like 50 years, you're going to write down a little bit. And so you might grab the viewpoints. You might just be like, look at this cool frog I found. So you might have a frog, a toad, a story about cane toads. Like, you're just going to write random stuff. It's going to be a good time. Turn passion into a career. I think that's like the longest one I've ever had. I mean, maybe not the longest one, but it's pretty long. So let me know down below how you feel about these getting longer, because like paper, wow. But like turn passion into a career, that's a long one. So if you're documenting all your side quests, and if you've written down the diverse viewpoints, maybe you can turn your passion into a career, because by writing everything down, you're probably a little bit more likely to have found your passion. And if you can't find it, maybe somebody would just look through your stuff with you, and they'd be like, hey, I see you're only focused on this one particular thing. Or it all wraps together around this one subject that my friend has a job in. So yeah, maybe that would help with a career. Although if you have to wait until you're 50 or 50 years from now to get into a career by using this, then that would not be a good use of time, probably, at least financially speaking. Education for your kids. So it might not turn your passion into a career, but if you are writing this stuff down for a very long time, you could pass it on to your kids or grandkids. So that's one of the benefits of having a digital commonplace, because you can copy all your stuff and you can easily distribute it. You don't have to like take pictures of it to hold on to it. You can just like type it out and then print it. So that's a little convenient. Just saying. So if you feel like I didn't really give the ethical dilemma bit enough of an explanation and you want to see me try that again, check out the next video on the morality of a commonplace. It's over 20 minutes. I gotta get out of here. I'll see you. Okay, bye.